next up, we have Chloe Hutchinson from iProspect. Hi, Chloe, how are you doing?
Hi, James.
How are you doing? You okay?
It's not allowing me to start my video. I think you need to I think you need to put my video on.
There you go. You should have.
Thank you.
Hey, how are we doing? There we go.
Good. How are you?
Yeah, no, we're really good. Thank you. Really good. Really looking forward to your session this morning. Yeah, obviously I've seen a sneak preview the other day. Really excited to hear what you've got to say. So yeah, I mean, let's dive in. So today, Chloe's going to be talking about nailing the audit and insights to achieve client buy-in for digital PR. We've already had a lot of questions on that in the first session of Q&A. So I'm hoping you'll answer some of them questions in your talk. So Chloe moved over to the dark side of digital PR 3 years ago after spending 4 years developing PR skills in traditional agencies. As well as being passionate about people and her team, she's data and Excel obsessed, loves crunching numbers and diving into competitor outreach tactics. So this fits really nicely into what Chloe's talking about today, nailing the audit. When Chloe pitched this session to us, it really stood out in terms of it's the side of digital PR that nobody talks about. Everyone talks about pitching, everyone talks about ideas. So I'm really looking forward to the session. So yeah, take it away, Chloe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, I'm just going to pop it into slideshow. Okay, so I hope I can follow Amy well because I really enjoyed Amy's talk on reactive PR. We're now going to talk about nailing the audit and insights to achieve client buy-in for digital PR. But there should also be some top tips within here for those key stakeholders too. So if you are joining from a traditional PR team or an in-house PR team, this should also give you some nice little tips to take away. See, James gave a bit of an introduction to me and my timeline. I've actually got a couple of slides as it's my first industry talk, which is really exciting. So I started out in PR about 7 years ago, and I started on the traditional side. Now, I know not all PR is super fluffy, but the stuff that I did really was. Quite literally, as I worked on a few interiors brands, and there were a lot of soft furnishings for product placement. But a lot of my role was product placement when I was back in traditional PR and a little bit B2B. And then I moved over to the dark side in 2018 when I joined iProspect and joined the digital PR team. And since then, really found my love for data, insights and measurement. And that's what's led to my passion with auditing and strategy. And over the last year and a half, I've played a key role in developing our audit and strategy at iProspect. So we all know that 2020 was a big year, and obviously 2021 is set to be even bigger. Need I even mention John Mueller's tweet? I wonder how many times that's going to be brought up today, but this year is going to be a big year, and the audit and strategy is going to be key to driving that success. So it is one of those most important things that you're going to create all year, and our evolved audit has helped us to drive an 89% increase in clients who have digital PR within their SEO mix. And this is across fashion, retail, automotive, transport, and many more. We've also increased our activity on our existing clients by 60%. And we've won some of our biggest pitches for the SEO team, which is really exciting. And this is all through this evolved audit. As mentioned, it is one of the most important things that you create all year because it underlies everything you propose. So all of those activities. And so that's why it's played such a key role. So very briefly, why it is so important. So it really is the foundation of everything that you propose. So it's the key takeaways that you'll get from your audit and those key points to drive success against those brand and search competitors will outline what needs to be done. And then through that, it will also provide that visual representation for the client So through your deck and how you showcase it, you'll be able to show the client what they really need to do and how you want to drive success for them. And then finally, it informs the overall strategy. So it informs all of the activity that you will be proposing for the whole year, whether that's reactive PR, creative content campaigns, and everything in between. So we're going to move on to a bit about the stages of the audit. And there are a few stages through from competitors all the way to delivery. However, they do cross over a little bit, which we will talk about today. But we're going to go through each one and you'll get to see where there's some crossover. So we'll start with the competitors. So this really is the first step. Before you start anything, you really need to understand who the competitors are for the brand. Now, direct competitors and search competitors can often be a little bit like apples and oranges. So internal teams might have a list of direct competitors, like those traditional competitors that they can provide to you. And occasionally they might not consider those search competitors as well, or even those challenger brands that are really focused on the digital space, as we've seen a lot of those in the last few years. So when thinking about the competitors that you want to include in your audits, make sure you are thinking about those search competitors too. So you need to analyze the search results for those key search terms that the brand prioritizes, and then look at who is ranking higher than you. You could also consider brands that have a high percentage of common keywords, and those could be included as well. So there is a little bit of initiative that you use within that, and your own judgment as well. But do also include those direct competitors, because the brand will obviously also like to see how they're performing too. There is a tool or a section on the tools where you can look at competing domains. So domains that have a high percentage of common keywords, and they can be really handy to get a feel for who shares your keywords and therefore should be considered. But do use some initiative with that, as I've had a few questionable ones come up. And then finally, on competitors, think about whether your brand has one product or service or multiple, because you might need to consider a few sets of competitors if you don't just have one product, as there will be a number of different search spaces to consider. So then once you have your competitors, it's time to delve into the data. Now, I love data, and I think this is the fun bit, but I know it can be a little confusing. Don't worry, once you nail your process and really spend some time to familiarize yourself with things, you will be able to do this in your sleep. Although I hope you're not dreaming too much about work, because I know that's really hard not to right now, with not much other stuff to take our minds off it. So onto the data, and the audit should look at all of these different areas. So first of all, the media landscape and what's working well within the media landscape, what's being covered and what's getting links. Secondly, tied to that, a vertical analysis. So thinking about those different products or services, or the different topics that your brand can talk about, and what's landing well within those, and what is driving links within those areas too. Third, we've got brand mentions. So is your brand naturally getting coverage, or are there brand stories going out that are being covered regularly? And are these mentions getting links? And how often is this happening? And then think about current performance and domain strength. So this also incorporates the quality of links, the volume of links, and those unique domains. And this all ties together. And then we have those link types. So when looking at that domain strength and those different links, have a think about and look into what different types of links that your brand already has. So where they're coming from and what categories. And then when you look at the competitors too and what link types they have, you then might find those new linking opportunities. So is there anything that your competitors doing that you could be doing, and better, obviously? So to undergo the audit at iProspect, we use a variety of SEO tools and they all have a different part to play. Now, in the top right-hand corner, we have got 2 of our in-house tools, which obviously logos you might not recognise. But the content library analyses thousands of campaigns to help us determine which assets drive the most links. So which are the most successful for, say, like the travel industry, that kind of thing. Then the link intelligence tool, that's a tool which analyses links achieved over the last 5 years. And it will determine which sectors are the best for different types of links. And so those are incorporated within our tool sets too. But you might already have your own tool sets, and that's great. So what you really need to do is find those gems within your own tool sets, and really familiarize yourself with the tools you already have and the data that you can pull through these. So thinking about what's actually available to you with these tools, but then what you could compare that to. And then as you get that data in, thinking about what questions might be asked about that data, and if you should be delving into that section a little bit more. And then finally thinking about that story, which we will come on to, but this is where it really starts to overlap. So thinking about what you want to tell with this data and what else would be good to know. Now, there are some key do's and don'ts when it comes to auditing. So under do, we've got to start with the basics. So do look at the current performance and how they're performing right now. So those things like the domain strength, the quality, and the number of links. And then start to delve further once you get an idea of how they're currently performing. Do consider the whole domain. So think about that big picture. Quite often there will be a blog section which sits outside of any other section, and then that's where the links are driven to, with internal linking obviously to different sections on site. But if we only look at the number of links or referring domains into a particular section when we're thinking about the overall authority, we're not accounting for those other links going into that blog section. So make sure you're considering the whole domain, especially when you're looking at things like domain authority. This ties to the previous point. So when it comes to what you're measuring, if you do want to look at a section, just make sure you're looking at metrics which align to that section. So it could be keyword rankings, or it could be something like page rank, if that's something that you look at. And then finally, think about that story. So think about what you're saying with your data and what else might be asked about their data to really delve into those areas that need the most work. And then on to the don'ts. So this made me laugh when I wrote this one, but don't make things up. No matter how tempting it is. I know we want to say that every brand needs links, but they might not all need those huge creative campaigns. They might need a smaller number of links, or there might be an area that they really need to focus on. And so doing this audit will help you to pull out those other key areas that they need to focus on. It might not all be about driving the most links. And then, so I would recommend not to mix tools in one section. Quite often, a number of tools will have different results for things like number of referring domains and things like that, which can be a little bit frustrating. But what I tend to do is use one tool and keep it consistent within that section. And then I ensure that I source the tool at the bottom of the slide too. So if the brand does want to look into things, they know where we've got that data. And we've got don't overcomplicate graphs. So think about how many points you have, how many data points you have on your graph, and just make sure it's super clear to people who don't usually do this in their day-to-days, because thinking about your audience, they might not be constantly looking at graphs. So you could even test them on other colleagues within different teams. Or if it's not a confidential pitch, I've often tested them on family or partner. And I know when explaining what we do in our careers, it hasn't always been the easiest to understand for family, but they should understand your graph. And then finally, for the don'ts, don't exclude any strengths the audit presents. So tied to the top with don't make things up. Like, don't be afraid to actually show them where they're doing well already. You can still pull out those areas to work on, but showing them where they're doing well is really key as well. Okay, so this is one of the most important parts in the audit and strategy, and that's creating the ultimate FOMO. And there are two things to think about when creating this. And I'm actually going to play you a video to give you a bit of a break to me talking and to showcase this a lot better than I'd be able to. So I hope it works. So following on from that, so obviously highlighting the coverage and activity that your competitors are driving is really key, but highlighting those links, which is obviously the most important part of digital PR, will help those to make those other teams feel competitive to also get those links. Also, alongside this, don't be afraid to showcase your own work. So case studies can be one of the best tools to create that FOMO of what has been working well for other brands. So now I'm going to change up slightly and I want to tell you a story. So once upon a time, there was a professional storyteller named Chloe, and she loved to tell her stories, which she had memorized in her head. Now, whoever had the chance to listen and gave their time always got a good story. Well, I like to think so, because she always thought about ensuring that there was a good start, middle, and end, and that however much time she had, she always landed those points. So this obviously ties to the audit and strategy and delivery. And the first point to think about is how long do you have to tell your story? So make sure that you can land those key points within a slide, if that is all that you have for that session. We all know that in big new business pitches, occasionally our sections will get cut, but we want to make sure that we're landing the best story. But then equally, you want enough material so that you could fill an hour's comprehensive meeting if you needed to. So have a think about the length of the time that you have. Number 2 is thinking about those key points that are going to drive the most FOMO and desire. So what are those key takeaways from your audit and what are those competitors doing? And then ensuring you're landing those key points within those key actions that you want to take. And then finally is thinking about that flow. So ensuring that you have that start, that middle, and that end. The start with the overall performance currently, the middle where you delve into those areas where you think there is that opportunity or you see more opportunity. And then finally, tying the audit into action with that end. So pulling out those key points and actually showcasing what you are recommending from that too. And that's how you end your story then. So finally, we're going to talk about nailing the delivery. Now, I'm sure you guys don't need all the top tips for this, but these are my 4 key points for how to nail the delivery for audits and insights. So number 1, in person is best. Obviously, right now that's virtually, but actually speaking to someone face to face and talking them through your graphs, your data, because it can be quite confusing, but also allowing time for questions really helps to get them engaged in what you're sending. Equally, if you don't have someone who's already really invested in digital PR, this can really help because it can show your passion too for it and how you want to drive the best success for them. Point 2, make sure you make your slides really clear. So this goes back to those graphs as well, and making sure your graphs are clear. But think about who you're presenting to, and think about if they would understand terms. So it maybe you might need to include a slide on what the terms that you are going to be using mean to help explain things. And then ensure that every slide, if you don't just have the one, obviously to sum up your story, ensure that every slide has that key takeaway from that slide. So it's completely clear what is being learned from this piece of data. And then tied to that, see, I just mentioned audience briefly, but do think about how much SEO knowledge they already have and how much detail you need to go into. Also, if you have a traditional PR team or an in-house PR team who will be attending the talk, make sure you outline that we're all obviously aimed for the same goals. There's no stepping on toes. So there could be extra things that you could include there to really highlight that for that team too. And then finally, let your passion and positivity shine. So it really shows then that you believe in what you're presenting, but also it shows that you are keen to do a really good job, because obviously we all are, and that by talking about it passionately, they will then buy into that conviction and be able to see that you want to be driving successfully. Okay, so to summarize, I've pulled together the 3 key points. So we've got obviously creating that FOMO through competitor activity, looking at what your competitors are doing, looking at where they're getting links, and making the team that you're presenting to jealous of that. Thinking about your story is number 2, and making sure you land those key points within whatever time frame you have. And then finally, nailing that delivery. So thinking about that passion and positivity, that audience, and obviously, if possible, delivering virtually, but in person. And that's everything from me.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that, Chloe. That was really, really great. And the questions are already flooding in. So yeah, to start off with then, so do you include any sort of SEO forecast in your pitches?
So it depends what kind of pitch we've got. So if we're doing, say, an upsell education piece, then we may not. If it's a bigger pitch, which is part with the SEO team and the bigger company, then we will include some kind of forecast, yes.
Great. Okay, cool. And an interesting one on that, from more a question for myself. How are you guys forecasting the impact of digital PR on SEO? Are you forecasting it as an SEO link building tactic? Are you forecasting it in brand and referrals? Sort of how are you guys forecasting, including digital PR forecasting
No, of course.
together?
So again, it really depends on the client and the current keyword landscape, because obviously with digital PR, we're looking to drive an improvement in search rankings. So it would depend on the industry and the client and those keywords, the keyword landscape, but also the types of activity that we think we can do through that audit, and therefore then the number of links that we would on average be looking to drive.
Great, good stuff. Another question that's come in is, one of the challenges I found is to find resources to build interactive landing pages with games, etc. Building a blog post is easier, but doesn't have all those cool features. How do you handle creating appealing campaigns with low technical or no technical resources?
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
So if we've got no tech resources for like those creative campaigns, we have found that statics do work too. I don't think everything has to be all singing, all dancing. I think that through Amy's talk as well just then, it's really highlighted that we don't need to be creating these huge pieces all the time. So if you don't have that tech resource, it's not the end of the world. You can still create a fantastic story and rank it in the press.
And stories sell, you know, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
journalists cover stories, not a content format. Okay, brilliant. So another question that's come in is, when showing clients audits like this, I often get asked, how many links do we need to get X? Either increase authority or rank better. How can we use audits to show that?
That's a very good question. So this is something actually I have been asked quite a few times. And again, it does depend on the keyword landscape. So really delving into where they're ranking well and what actually needs improving, and where they are currently positioned obviously depends on how much work will need to be done to bring them up to page 1 and the top of page 1. So you'll need to look at that keyword landscape to include that information within there to help showcase that. Cool,
brilliant, thank you. So another one that's come in, what would you say are 2 or 3 of the most important audit points that are asked for from clients? Say if you're crunched for time or aren't as experienced, what are the points that should be focused on?
So if you're crunched for time, definitely current performance versus key competitors. So looking at the authority that they currently have and the strength of their profile. Then if there's anywhere that their competitors are doing something that's so much better, so like their creative content campaigns, for example, pulling out some of those examples to showcase where they're getting those links and driving that FOMO, and just highlighting though where the biggest opportunity is. So if our competitors are doing lots of these campaigns and that is obviously helping them to move up the SERPs, then highlighting that we need to be doing that as well to remain competitive within that search landscape.
Awesome, thank you. So when doing digital PR for SEO first, do you commit to any deliverables or link KPIs or give any guarantees about minimum results?
Well, so this depends on the client. Some clients ask for link targets and some ask for what we're aiming for. So it really varies. Sometimes we will send over like a ballpark of what we're aiming for, but our main focus being on having a positive impact on those search rankings for a certain keyword bucket. So we'll send over the examples.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was going to say, you know, it really comes down to what that, you know, certainly from our side at least, it's what that engagement is. Are you being engaged simply to do digital PR and build links, or are you being engaged to drive visibility in the SERPs? If that's the case, then those KPIs and guarantees are probably quite different. So another one that's coming, Chloe, how are you measuring the authority that you spoke about?
So authority is measured a few different ways. So we do have a look at domain authority, but we also have a look at the authority of the referring domains that are pointing to the client site. And it helps to build the big picture of everything.
Amazing, great. So what would your advice be if the client doesn't have a competitor who's doing digital PR or link building? How do you create that FOMO?
So have a look at the wider industry as well. There are occasionally competitors, like you say, that don't have any like direct competitors that are doing really creative things. But if you look broader into the different verticals that they could sit within and look at what's going on within those verticals too, so stretch the brand a little bit, and that can help you to create that FOMO.
Amazing, great. Thank you very much. And just one more, which tools do you prefer the most for doing this sort of activity?
I was expecting that one.
Yeah, the common one.
I think my favourite, obviously alongside the in-house tools, my favourite is probably Ahrefs. Don't know what, I can just sit for hours on that. I get too much into it probably. But yeah, that's my favourite tool.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much, Chloe. That was really, really great. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back at 11:30 when we have Alex Jones from Motive PR and we have Gus Fogier from Wolfgang Digital with 2 really, really great talks. So yeah, we'll see you all back here in about 20-25 minutes. Thank you very much. And thank you again, Chloe.
Thank you for having me.